You found us through fly fishing. You'll stay for our passion and the community. Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Podcast.
Yeah, but he doesn't get it. How come fly fishermen don't get it?
You only haul with the short power snap.
Look for where people walk and the insides of bends and hunt those.
The roof blew off and the interior walls got sucked out. And the trees are just coming up. And I mean, he's clearly not going to clear the trees.
It is not a fly fishing story. It's a story about me trying to understand my brother through fly fishing.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today.
Before we get started, quick word from our sponsor, Smitty's Fly Box, delivering monthly flies, fly materials, and accessories each month with their Smitty's subscription fly box. Smitty's has been producing high-quality flies and materials for over 30 years, so now it's time to take the guesswork out of fly time materials and patterns. You can support this podcast right now and get a great selection of flies and fly time materials right now at Smitty's Fly Box. That's Smitty's, S-M-I-T-T-Y-S, smitty'sflybox.com. We've been waiting for you. Follow our guests, follow us on Instagram, and share this episode and the love if you enjoy this podcast. And we are live in 3, 2, 1. How you doing, John?
Hey, good, Dave. It's great to be back. I love your show, so it's an honor that I'm here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think you've got some amazing stuff going as well. We're going to talk about what you have going with your podcasts and everything there. We get a lot of questions about, not only preparing food, things like that, but I mean, half of our audience, I know, I just ran a survey, and half of our audience are all hunters. So not only do they fish, but they hunt as well. So, deer hunting, elk hunting, duck hunting, you name it. I think that a lot of people are going to like what we're going to talk about today. But we first met on, it won't be the first time we met, but we did engage a little bit on that thing, Clubhouse. And I just asked this because I'm curious where it was at. I think it was in 21, maybe it was COVID. But is that Clubhouse still going at all? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea. That started out as such a cool thing. I was so excited about that, and I was just certain that it was going to work, and then it did not.
Yeah, and it did not. The Clubhouse app, a social media thing, did not work. But
well, at least not for me.
No, not for me either. No, we chatted a bit on there, but take us into this real quick. I want to talk about the Food Afield podcast. I want to talk about cooking wild game and fish and things like that. But let's get back into fishing, because I know you have a connection to fly fishing as well. How did you first get into fly fishing, and we'll take it into this podcast?
Yeah, for sure. It came to me from an old mentor. I was guiding up in the Northwest Territories on the eastern arm of Great Slave Lake. And there was one of the head guides there was Charlie Woodbury. And Charlie was from Salt Lake City. And I don't know, he was in his late 60s, I would say, when I was in my early 20s. And he just sort of took me under his wing, and he would fly fish a lot when we would go out in the evenings in the river near the cabins. And I just became enthralled with it, and I had to do it. It was a thing that struck me as artful, and I've always sort of gravitated towards the things that are difficult and the things that require, that sort of dedication to craft, right? So it seemed like, and I've never looked back. Like, I can't remember the last time I touched, a regular spinning rod. It's been decades.
Right. So you've got the fly fishing has been going strong for a while, and also on the hunting. So you were doing a lot of the hunting, and what was this like? You were guiding groups would come up and they were hunting up there?
Well, I did a lot of guiding for about 10 years in my 20s, maybe not 10 years, 7 years. And so it started out as guiding for other outfitters. So one of the people that I guided for was Jim Hole here in the Edmonton bow zone. And he taught me, a lot about bow hunting these huge whitetails that we have up here. And so that was a good guy to get connected with. And then from there, I was trying to fill my calendar with gigs. And I hooked up with a guy, Warren Witherspoon. And Warren was the owner of a bear hunting camp and in northern Alberta, and then Frontier Fishing Lodge, which is, like I said, on Great Slave Lake. And so my calendar got filled up really fast between those two outfitters. Oh, another person I should mention as well is a friend of mine. I guided with him. We're the same age, Jeff Lander. And so Jeff and I started at the same time, and Jeff now has his own outfit and still doing it, called Primitive Outfitting. So he does mainly bear hunts in northern BC now. So my calendar got filled up really fast with being outdoors. And I was obviously crazy about hunting and fishing to begin with. So I took advantage of learning from people that we were guiding or people that I was hanging out with, like Charlie and Jim Hole and all these people. And it just morphed into a lifelong sort of obsession. But I mean, it started way before then. Like, as far back as I can remember, I have wanted to kill things and eat them. And it is so ingrained in my DNA from the time I was like 7 or 8 years old. I remember wanting to cook things.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting that I didn't go down the chef route, but thankful that I didn't. So.
Right. And this has been going back, like the hunting and outdoors, like your whole life as a kid, is that sort of thing?
Oh, dude, I would drive my mom nuts to get a gun when I was like 7 years old, like grade 1, and we grew up on the farm north of Edmonton. So just in the parkland, just on the edge of the boreal forest, and near our farm, we had wetlands that were filled with ducks. And well, at the time they were only filled with ducks, and, pine sandhills around us and agricultural land. So we had whitetails and ducks and grouse and rabbits and squirrels. And there was a good part of my time when I was just out, after school, I would be gone, and on the weekends I would just be gone, like disappear for 2 days kind of thing. And mom wouldn't let me have a gun. So it naturally went to a bow, and that was okay with her. So that's how I got started with bow hunting. And I've only picked up a rifle in the last 2 years. Like, I haven't.
Oh, really?
I own a rifle now, and kind of spend half my time wishing I didn't. It's one of those things where, not that I have anything against that. I just finished talking with a guy here this morning about that sort of thing, where he's feeling beat up a bit because, people, making fun of him or saying that he's not a hunter because he chooses to use a rifle or a compound bow or whatnot.
Right.
So sick of that. Just tired of it.
Gotcha. Wow. Okay. So I see it now. The bow hunting has been there, and I love that your mom would give you a gun. So you're like, all right, I'll use a bow. And a lot of times you hear people, maybe not a lot of times, but I know it'd be my style. I haven't got into bow hunting yet, but it seems like people start rifle hunting and then they get into bow hunting, or they start conventional fishing and they get into fly fishing, right? But you did bow hunting from the beginning. I mean, what does that look like as far as the game? Because you're up in an area where I've been up there a little bit, and I know, hunting, that way of life a lot of people are doing that. Do you just find wild game everywhere? Is that not a problem filling your freezer for you throughout the year? Or is that pretty much what everybody does up there?
No, I wouldn't say everybody does it. I just had Clay Newcomb on the show, and Clay is down in Arkansas. And so funny. I find it so interesting between the US and Canada. You guys have such a rich culture with firearms, obviously. Yeah. And I'm not saying that tongue in cheek. Like, I know that you have some problems with it. I'm saying you have a rich culture with it. And along with firearms was the hunting culture and the pioneer culture. And it's funny because in Canada, we had the exact same timeline of history. We had the fur trade, and we had pioneers and settlers, and that all had firearms, of course, and they were all hunting to eat, to live. But for some reason, that hunting culture didn't really translate over very well. I find it interesting. So not a lot of people up here hunt,
Oh, well, that's interesting. So you're saying basically, a lot of people that hunting, you think the hunting culture transferred over, maybe more even down here than it did up there in Canada.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So hunting up here, and I'm just talking in generalities, of course. So the people that I hang out with, are artful, thoughtful hunters. But a lot of the hunting up here is simply a weekend once a year where you go and get your moose, or you go and get your deer. And it's driving around in your truck in the agricultural roads until you see the moose or the deer, and you jump out and you shoot it. And, and of course there's legalities with all of that just tend to
Yeah.
Go out the window, excuse the pun.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'm not saying that everybody's a poacher, but it's just that culture of hunting is not a pastime. It's a means to an end, because I want moose meat in the freezer. And so that's sort of the culture up here. There's not a lot of, it's like, go to Cabela's, get the stuff that you think that you've been told that you need, go out for the weekend and shoot your deer. And now you're a hunter. And you are.
Yeah.
There's different levels of hunter. And again, I refuse to be the person that belittles that, any outdoor activity. We're all brothers in fishing and hunting. So
that makes sense. And I think what I'd love to hear is about how, what you do with Food Afield and everything you have going is a little different than that, because I think we have plenty of those people. In fact, I'm kind of like that person. Fly fishing has been my thing just because I've got a couple of little kids, and it's been tough for me to get out and do as much stuff as I used to do, just because of life. So I am kind of that hunter. Okay, deer hunting, week is coming. Elk hunting has been on the back burner for me. So it hasn't been like a daily way of life. Describe that for you. Like, what is bow hunting for you? Is that what it is? Is this thing always in every day for you?
Yeah, I didn't really answer your question, did I? So there is no shortage of wild game in my freezer. And it's just me that eat, so I don't need a lot. So my hunting has morphed into more simplistic terms. So from the time I've been 7 years old or 8 years old, or whenever it started, I hunt for food and I fish for food. I just can't overemphasize that is my focus. And so, yeah, it's pretty easy now when I go out to find that game, and I devote enough time to it where I'm usually successful at whatever it is that I'm trying for. And it's just sometimes I don't try that hard,
right?
I don't need it, or whatever, right? So yeah.
Every adventure on the water starts with a single cast. At Jackson Hole Fly Company, the first cast begins with them. From their thoughtfully designed rods and reels to intricate detail of over 1,000 meticulously hand-tied fly patterns, they embrace the story of dedication and their commitment to quality in every product they carry. Shop for fly fishing gear where quality meets affordability and exceptional craftsmanship doesn't come with a hefty price tag. Arm yourself with the gear that doesn't just support your passion, but amplifies it. Fly fishing begins here. Shop now, JacksonHoleFlyCompany.com. That's JacksonHoleFlyCompany.com. I want to hear about the Food Afield, because this is where I first connected with you. How did the idea of a podcast come to be, and how's it been going with that?
Well, I've always been, because of my background with guiding and outfitting, I've sort of been in that sphere of content creation, even back into the 90s, when people, Larry Jones and Chuck Adams and all those guys. I mean, back then it was writing magazine articles, of which I've appeared in countless of them, and I started writing them myself. Then it was like the videos. All of a sudden, hunting videos became a thing on VHS, and so I've been a part of a lot of other people's hunting videos, and it's just sort of morphed. Currently, I'm on-screen character with the From the Wild web series, and I've been doing that for this. We're recording season 10 this year, and that's my friend Kevin Kossowan who owns that franchise, and so I just sort of have been attracted to sharing the things that I do. I mean, I get told over and over again, what you live an interesting life, or you're doing interesting things. And so I first thought of the podcast. Okay, so let's just share interesting things. Well, here's another thing too. The other interest that I've had for a long time has been radio broadcasting. So as a kid, I remember distinctly playing with my siblings in the house, and we did all sorts of weird things, as far as creating little ecosystems within our house. But I remember one time, my brother and sister were upstairs in the house, and they had their houses, we'd built them little houses. And then I was the radio station down in my bedroom, and we were using walkie-talkies, and that was the radio,
That's cool.
So I was broadcasting. And so you tie all of that stuff together and you come up with the idea of having a podcast. I didn't want to copy Kevin. That was important to me. So, don't do video. It's kind of tough when we're out doing stuff together to have two sets of video equipment going. So So yeah, I just went with the podcast idea. Of course, like most things in my life, I joined it a little too late and missed the gold rush type of thing. And you know what? Honestly, though, Dave, I don't know what you think, but I think we're still in the infancy of all of this.
Yeah, I think that's what I always say. I think that it always feels like with podcasting or a lot of these things, you always miss it. Same for me. I started in 2017 with the podcast, and I was like, "Oh man, I'm way late to the game." You know what I mean? But I wasn't, and I don't think you are or anybody right now that wants to start a podcast. I think that there's always room, right? Because you're just building a group of people, a community, and anybody can do that. That's what's amazing about it. You know what I mean? So I think you're good. I don't know when you started. We could talk about that, but I think you're still doing well.
Yeah, well, I'm not even 100 episodes in yet.
Yeah, you're 97, right? Pretty close to 100.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I'm fine. But you know what the struggle was for me, Dave? Like, you're so focused with your show, and so it makes it so that the audience knows what to expect from you. But with me, it's like, I don't know, dude. Like, I'm building a net out of hazel, or I'm fly fishing, or bow hunting, or rifle hunting, or foraging, or whatever it is I'm doing, right? So I create this. So it's really interesting what you said right off the top, where you did the poll that, about half, what did you say, half of your listeners?
Yeah, a little 55%, I think, in the last survey we did.
I suspect that's kind of low. So it's probably a reflection of, your audience, because you are just so niche down into fly fishing. But anyways, I'm trying to pay you a compliment, because I think that's the way to go. So with me, my problem has been, well, you're too, like, anytime I talk about fly fishing, I don't think it's true, but I feel like some of my audience, their eyes glaze over. And then, conversely, when I talk about bow hunting, the fly fisher guys disappear, and girls.
Right. And now talk about, so you have like within your on your website at Food Afield Podcast.com, there's a couple of podcasts. There are a few there. Now describe that, because we're doing something similar, I think, but now talk about that.
Well, it occurred to me to niche down, because I've always looked up to you and your show and others. And I went, okay, so try to niche down a bit. And I think I'm creating a problem where maybe one doesn't exist, but I don't know. Time will tell. So I just decided to go with a series. So with my past life, I've became friends, and I've hunted a few times with E. Donald Thomas Jr. And so he was the editor of Traditional Bow Hunter magazine. And I published several articles through him. So whenever I want to publish an article, whenever it hits me, I usually just send Don an email and go, here's what I'm thinking. And he'll edit it for me or whatever, and then submit it to the magazine. Since then, he's gone away, not completely from the magazine, but he's gone away as editor, and introduced me to David Tetzlaff. And David is a younger guy. Well, he's like I think he's younger than I am.
Yeah.
We're kind of the same age.
Yeah.
And so I'm calling myself a young guy all of a sudden. But anyways, we became friends. And the idea sort of came to us to create a loose partnership. There's no money involved. It's just the magazine promotes the show, and in exchange, I promote the magazine. And they, with their connections with all of the authors of the magazine and these bow hunting legends that I probably wouldn't have access to on my own, now all of a sudden I've got access to these people. There's a few, like, Clay Newcomb that I mentioned earlier. I've known him since before he was a big time guy. So he was gracious enough to grant me some of his precious time. But other guests that we've had on that series, they don't know me from Adam and wouldn't give me the time of day without David, giving him a bump on an email. And so there's that. There's the Traditional Bow Hunter's Journey, and there's the Food Afield Podcast. And then now I've started a new series, which is called Unlock the Wild. And so the theme that surrounds all three of those podcasts is inspiring and educating people. So what's happening, what I find really interesting right now, is that there is a huge population of young people in their 20s and 30s that live in a condo in downtown Toronto or downtown anywhere, and that are wanting to live the lifestyle that you and I take for granted, where we go out fishing or we go out hunting, and we have, a freezer full of what they perceive as free food, or, at least it's sustainable. And so all of three of those series are geared towards inspiring and educating those people. Now, there's going to be a lot of listeners to your show who have been fly fishing for 30 or 40 years or whatever that are going to say, well, yeah, I don't want to listen to that. So the challenge with that is to keep those people interested as well. So I blend in a lot of like situational type audio. So I'll be recording one of our trips, and then I try to record, as the mule deer is coming down the trail towards me, I'll be recording that. And I try to capture that audio, that adventure style, that documentary style stuff. So, and then, when I'm talking to people, like if I'm doing an interview like you do, it's always geared towards, well, how do I get started in doing it? But then, you mix in enough stories to keep people that already know how to do it interested, right? So,
yeah.
Long answer to a short question.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's so these series going within your feed, so it's all in the same feed of your podcast and the same listeners. They just get a chance to make it clear. And that's kind of what we do, what I've done now with, our Great Lakes podcast series. Our Phil Rowley is doing the Stillwater, littoral zone. And I'm trying to do that where and it is going to our feed. Yeah, exactly. Traveled. So it's an opportunity, I think, to dig into a topic a little more. And so not everybody is going to like Great Lakes podcast. Some people won't listen that week. But I think what I've heard is that, we've done a little bit different maybe too, is that I'm not even hosting the show. So I let Jeff go out and do the host. Sometimes he does solo episodes. Sometimes Phil does solo, So I think those guys are the gurus. I'm actually not the guru. And I think in your situation, you are the guru. That's the unique thing, right? You could just riff on podcasts on your own and people, right?
Yeah, but that's, I think, why you and I get along is like, we've been doing these things a long time, but has there ever been a situation where you haven't learned something?
Yeah. No.
Whether it's from the situation or from somebody else? Like, so, that's the other sort of toxicity that I see online with hunting and fishing world is, this sort of attitude, like, no, I'm going to tell you what to do.
Oh, right.
And so I don't like that. It's like, I've been doing this a long time, and as have you and as have other people. And so I have a lot to share, but I'm also genuinely curious about what it is that Dave does when he's fly fishing or what it is that somebody else does when they're bow hunting. So I don't know, that's what keeps me alive, is the constant learning about how to do things. So.
Right. Yeah, me too. This is good. Well, we're going to learn, I think today I want to talk. I had we get a few questions on this, and this one I was looking at was from Janelle Mullen, who was asking about, cooking game or fish, equipment, best techniques to prepare fish in the field, recipes, stuff like that. What do you, if somebody's sitting there, and part of it is the getting of the animals or the meat, right? So you got to have that part, but some of that you could go to the store potentially, right, or your local market and get whatever. But once you get it, what do you tell somebody if they're kind of new to preparing? Say they're terrible at cooking, and they just want to make some food that tastes good. Like, where do you start with that? I'm not sure, like, what you do. Do you, have your Traeger and, you know what I mean? It's do you think, are you doing all sorts of techniques out there in the field of cooking and all that stuff?
No. So one of the things that I really like to focus on as well is, and it hurts my sponsorship opportunities, is that I don't really like gear. I don't want a lot of gear. So, I have a really nice pan. It's a little De Beyer's pan, maybe 8 inches across kind of thing. And that goes with me everywhere. I have a grill from Bare Bones Living that I adore that sort of sets up over top of any heat source. And that's all I need. That's literally all I need. And the biggest thing that I can tell people in preparing any wild food, the number one thing by far that is important is the method of preparing it. Has nothing to do with seasoning for the most part, has nothing to do with, marinating or this or that. It's how you prepare it. So for instance, with fish, let's just use trout.
Yeah.
One of my favorite, absolutely my favorite thing to do is just to pan fry it. And you go, well, we've all tried that and failed. But so there is a technique to doing that is correct, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I do, that's another topic of discussion, is the whole catch and keep type thing. I tend to fish waters where I'm allowed a keep limit. I don't necessarily, I'm not a big fan of going out and purposefully catching and release fish. So I will catch a fish and then So another layer of, so you're going to go, well, yeah, I can catch a fish on my first cast. Does that mean my day is done fly fishing? It's like, no, because I add layers. I add photography. I add cooking. I add watercolor painting or journaling. I add entomology. I add I have layers of enjoyment where I could literally go out and make one cast on a fly stream, catch my fish, and then fill the rest of my day with doing really cool stuff, right? Yep. And so that's my MO. But so getting back to preparing the fish, I catch my fish. I learned from a good friend of mine, chef, that to score the skin, so I take a sharp knife and I just cut lateral lines down the side of the fish. I heavily season it with salt, and I get the pan ready. And in the pan has a combination of butter and oil, about half and half, so that the butter doesn't burn. And I'll get the pan to a high heat, but just before it smokes, kind of thing. And so there's a whole technique with campfire cooking around that in itself, which I could talk about for an hour. You never have that pan over an open flame; it's over coals, and the fire is going in another part of the campfire. You keep your fire going to generate more coals, and then you add or subtract coals from underneath your grill to regulate your heat, right? So I get the pan medium high to high, and then the trout goes in the pan and it's going to sizzle hard. And the temptation is to flip it and check it, flip it and check it. And you're going to destroy it if you do that.
Oh, right.
It's going to be gross. So leave it longer than you think you should until all of those sugars in the skin and the flesh have caramelized and it's created a crust. And you can even go a little bit overboard and char it, and that will give it, another distinct flavor. But take it to whatever level you want, and then just flip it over. So of course you've gutted the fish ahead of time, but that's all I do. That's it. Gut it. Yeah. And then you're going to take it over to the other side and do the exact same thing. And then the next most important, so now you've got the texture, so that wherever you've made the slit, that skin has sort of curled up and it's caramelized and charred a little bit and crusted, and it's crunchy and it's just salty, buttery goodness, right? And you've done that on both sides. The next thing is to take it off the pan and then just leave it sit, because depending on the size of the fish, you might have flesh in the middle of the fish that isn't quite cooked yet.
Yep.
But it will. So just leave it, right? So, if you've got a small fish, you're done. You just eat it right there. But if you've got a larger fish, then yeah, you're going to want to just leave it sit for 15 minutes and the internal temperatures will regulate.
Could you do this with a larger fish, that's, I don't know, whatever, but 5-10 pound fish, just cut it into chunks to put in there, that sort of thing?
Yeah, we've done that with a steak. You can steak it or like a fillet, but if you do it with a fillet, then the principle is exactly the same, where you're going to score that skin. And then what I usually do is skin side down, and I get that char built up, because you don't want the skin to be, wet and loose. You want it crisp, right? So skin side down, and you're going to see the white in the flesh start to creep up, the sides of the fillet. And when it gets about halfway up, I would say that's usually about when you're done. And then I'm just going to flip it over, and I'm going to flip it over for, depending on your heat, maybe not even a minute, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and then you're done. And then just serve it like that. And so the thing with game that I mentioned is the preparation, but it's also the cooking level that you take it to. So you don't want fish to go well done.
Yeah.
You want it to be medium or medium rare. And that's the way I like it, at least anyways. And that's when it's going to have all of its moisture, all of its fishy goodness. It's just going to, right? And then conversely, it's the opposite with, well, no, it's not the opposite. It's exactly the same with wild game. So for instance, whitetail. But you get into different sort of cuts, right? If you're doing a steak, then you do not want to take whitetail beyond, medium rare, at most medium rare, because the minute you overcook it, it gets gamey and livery and gross. If you take, a whitetail, that's why a lot of people complain about whitetail or venison. Well, it tastes gamey. How do I get rid of the gamey taste? It's because you took it like a ribeye or something, right? If you like your steaks well done, or or medium well. Well, you can't do that with venison. You have to learn to like it a little bit juicy and pink or red. And then that taste completely goes away. Like, it's just gorgeous. So
that's good. So trout, so that's good. We talked about the trout, and that is a good, easy thing to think about as far as the time. I guess if you think of a tiny, let's just say, just roughly, I know this changes a little bit, but if you've got a 10-inch fish that's on the pan, or an 8-inch fish that's on the pan, roughly, it's on a side for like 4 minutes before you flip it.
Yeah, that seems about right to me.
Yeah, you're not on there for 10.
Yeah, no, you can check it. Like, you can flip it. You can just move it up gently and see where you're at with that caramelization. Like, has it gone dark brown or light brown? And I always like to take it to a darker brown and then do the same thing on the other side. Yeah.
Skwala Fly Fishing puts as much time, thought, and effort into designing fishing apparel as you put into finding fish. Founded in Bozeman, Montana by a group of fly anglers who wanted better gear, Skwala builds functional, comfortable, and dependable fly fishing apparel. I've been loving the thermal 150 hoodie I've been wearing from Skwala, and to be honest, I haven't been able to take this thing off. It's super soft. It's perfect in the whether you got hot weather, cold days. This thing is an all-around great piece of gear. Combining advanced materials with fishing-focused, purpose-built design, Skwala waders, jackets, shirts, pants, and insulation are made for us. To help Wet Fly Swing listeners, that's you, Skwala is offering a 10% discount on your next order. Just use Wet Fly Swing 10 at checkout right now to get 10% off your next order. That's Skwala, Skwala. Gear for us, the like-minded few, serious anglers who don't take themselves too seriously. So you got me thinking, you mentioned it, whitetail. And in whitetail are spread around. I'd imagine we don't have as much of them where we are, but I mean, you hear about these stories of just whitetail everywhere. People are shooting back east, whitetail left and right. So I'm sure a lot of people have those opportunities. So if you got the whitetail, is this like a grill thing? Talk about how you would cook this, a good chunk. Let's just say, I don't know if you want to think of a cut of meat. How would you prepare a whitetail?
Oh, my favorite way of doing most things is to braise them. Braising or confit is another way to do it. And those are basically simmering your pieces of meat. Confit would be to simmer that piece of meat in fat of some sort. So, bear fat is a great one, but any sort of fat. And you will just slowly, like, it's just barely bubbling. You're not deep frying it at all. It's hot or it's warm oil that is cooking the meat over the course of hours. And then same with braising. So braising would be doing that in flavored water. So you can, if you just put a piece of meat in a slow cooker, that would be a form of braising, except you want more liquid in there, right? And then you flavor that liquid with herbs or spices or other vegetables or whatever it might be, right? So that's my favorite way, is to take, now there's the exception that proves the rule that, that's when you can take venison to obviously very well done, where it's literally just falling apart. And you will not have that gamey taste because, of course, it absorbs the flavors from whatever the liquid is they were using, right? So you still get that good venison-y flavor, but it's a good flavor. It's not a gross liver flavor. So that's my favorite way. And then the braising liquid is still good for sauces, for instance. So, what I'll do is I'll take that braising liquid and then just, reduce it down to a more flavorful type of sauce, I guess. So, yeah, then that can go over top. And yeah, that's my favorite way. Yeah. There's all sorts. I mean, and sausage, of course, we do a lot of ground work with meat. But, here's another thing, though, too, Dave, is like a lot of people, this is so common, it's not even funny. Of course, you will take your worst cuts and make them into ground, right? Shoulder cuts or, neck or whatever. But you shouldn't do that. I treat my ground meat as if it was a prime cut. So oftentimes I've even done it with tenderloin, but now we're getting a little ridiculous. But to take the loin, for instance, which is typically a steak cut, like grind that up. And you will have the most amazing outcome of texture, right? If you did a patty or a sausage or a meatball, for instance, right?
Yeah, right.
So you do a meatball with like a piece of neck meat, it's still going to be like eating ground up racket balls, right?
Yeah.
But if you do that with a loin, it's just going to be melty goodness. And then what I do with those rough cuts, like a shoulder cut or a shank or neck especially, that's what I use for braising. So I do a lot of ground and I do a lot of braising. I don't do a lot of steaks, actually. I'm not a big steak guy.
So you don't. So when you talk about that grill you have, what are you putting on that grill over the fire?
Oh, a pot or my pan, with that braising liquid.
Oh, gotcha. So you're not doing a lot of like throwing meat on the fire, like on a grill, sort of just flame broiled sort of thing.
No, because wild game doesn't really lend itself very well to that. There's no fat in it. So there's no moisture benefit to it, right? You can grill it and it's just going to be leathery dry on the outside.
Yep. Unless you cook like a juicy cow hamburger, right? It's got all sorts of fat in there. Yeah, that's totally different.
Yeah, that you're mixing bear fat in with or pork fat or whatever. Yeah, so then that's how I create that moisture and that flavor. So venison steaks to me, a lot of times too, I will braise a steak. So I'll cut a steak and then I'll braise it until it's tender and then I'll put a sauce over it. So it becomes like a Salisbury steak kind of idea, right?
Right.
But just to grill a steak, like a venison steak, yeah, no, I'm not a big fan of that. It just gets dry. Like there's no way that you can make it not dry, right?
Yeah.
There's no fat.
And I've done a lot of that in previous, over the years. I've definitely screwed that one up. Is that?
Me too.
Yeah. No, it's good. So, and I love that. So basically, I mean, the tip here is, you could go get a slow cooker if you don't have one, and basically start there and just think of braising as a good way to cook. What is, if we do think recipes, what would be a good resource? If somebody really wants to do this, they're going to go to a cooker, maybe they have one, but they want to learn about some of the recipes, like you said, the herbs, what to put in. Where would you send them to learn about that?
I'm probably not the right guy to ask about that because I don't follow recipes. So that's another sort of tip I would give people as well. What flavor do you like? What do you like? Do you like sweet and sour type stuff? Well, then, sure, look up how to make a sweet and sour sauce. Do you like bechamel type sauces? Do you like creamy sauces?
Yeah, right.
Do you like cheesy sauces? So the only recipe I would ever say that you need to learn is how to make those sauces, because those sauces are going to be the critical piece of the puzzle. The meat itself is just a braised piece of meat that has flavor, but the sauce is going to be what adds that beautiful finishing touch of flavor. So, yeah.
Okay.
So get a sauce book. Get a sauce cookbook.
That's it. Sauce book. That'll be easy. Okay. So, and then talk about the sausage. How do you do that? What is that a long process if somebody wanted to get into making sausage or making it? Yeah. How does that look?
Gosh, no. So you don't even need a grinder. So in the old days, I don't know when grinders were invented, but whatever. There was a point in time when they weren't. And so you can grind meat with a knife and you just mince it. It's called mincing. And you just chop and chop and chop and chop and chop until you get the consistency that you're looking for. And then the thing I love about, quote unquote sausage is just that you can add whatever flavors you want. And it's infinite. Like, do you want it salty? Do you want it sweet? Do you want it spicy? Do you want it peppery? Do you want it,
do anything?
Yeah. So I would say with sausage that the sky's the limit. Like literally, you can add any flavor that you ever wanted. And the beautiful thing about that is that you can do that with, foraging with wild. There's plenty of plants out there that give you different tastes. There's different ingredients, mushrooms, and different things that you can chop in there and mince in with your sausage that, you would never be able to buy that from a grocery store. And a lot of times I'm riffing. So what's interesting is I'm talking to you about this and I just came up with an idea for my next sort of sausage meat, and it's going to be diced or minced mushrooms in with the sausage.
Right.
Have you ever heard of that?
No.
I don't think I have.
No, but I love mushrooms.
So it'll be like a sausage. It'll be like a mushroomy sausage, right?
God, wow. It's like the ultimate. Add some eggs and you got a full breakfast there. That's like
There you go. Yeah. So that's the thing that I love about wild game or cooking in general, but wild game cooking is just, I'm big into layers, Dave. So many outdoors people stop at the groceries, just stop at the gas station and grab a can of beans and a 6-pack of beer, and then they go fly fishing. But I've never enjoyed my outings more than I do now when I've added in those different layers of cooking, of photography, of, even journaling or writing is a big thing for me now. I don't know about you, but you go on a trip and it's like, and then you're talking with your buddy about it later. He's like, do you remember that fish? I'm like, oh no, I don't remember that. What do you know? So like keeping a journal is something that's huge for me now and takes up some time. Maybe I'll take an hour of my day to journal, or paint. I've gotten into painting and I'm horrible at it and it's hard for me to do, but man alive, like to sit on the bank of a stream or river that you just caught a big brown trout out of and then try to capture that, with a photo or with a painting or with words. Like, that's powerful stuff.
God, that is amazing.
And then have a good meal afterwards.
Right.
Your whole day is filled with cool, right? Yeah.
I love this. I love what you're painting here. The picture is that, journaling is a great tip because I think that's something I, again, struggle with, but it is a great thing, a great habit, to do because it gets you, obviously writing, capturing moments. And, long term, you could probably write a book, I'm sure, if you did enough of it, right? Journaling over time.
Well, I don't know. Like, I guess I'll plug it a little bit. You can edit it out if you want, but I've created some journals. And so they're over at Amazon.
Oh, cool.
And just kind of done it. But I've created like a fly fishing journal and a bow hunting journal. And so they're relatively similar, but.
Now, is this a journal you mean like literally somebody can go buy a blank journal and then they can use, or is it a written book?
No, it's you fill in the details.
Oh, good. Oh, this is awesome.
But I've offered prompts, so, and because I've done it for so long, so with fly fishing, I'm asking you, questions like what insects did you see? What flies did you use? What worked? What didn't? What was the water temperature? What was the time of year? What stream were you on? What did you catch? And then most importantly, notes on the side, what would you do differently next time? Or what do you want to try next time? So those are all the details that I always put into just a blank notebook. And I thought, okay, well, let's create something that's kind of neat and prompts people with those questions. And the beautiful thing about that is that when you collect enough data, you can go back and reread your trips from last year and you completely relive them. It's like, oh, I forgot about that, or hey, let's go fishing this weekend. And you flip through your journal and you realize that for the last 3 years, fishing on that particular weekend has really sucked. So, maybe you do something different, or maybe you try something completely out of the box, And then the other benefit to it is that you create an heirloom. You kind of alluded to it, but you imagine having 6 or 7 of those journals that are sitting on your shelf and you're 90 years old and your grandkids or great grandkids are wheeling around and they want to read about grandpa's trip that he did, 60 years ago kind of thing. So I think those are powerful things to tap into as well.
I love that. Yeah, I think and I've heard a few of those stories. I think we've been interviewing some biographers. We got another one coming up with like Hemingway and stuff like that. And you hear about these stories of people who wrote their memoirs. Hemingway is obviously a huge writer, but, I heard this story about Ulysses S. Grant, kind of the Civil War back, and he was talking about how he struggled, went broke, but literally towards the end of his life, he was like, all right, I'm going to write my memoir and save my family. And he literally wrote his memoir and gave his family money for the rest of their lives sort of thing. So,
I didn't know that story. That's neat.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's pretty cool to imagine that's, again, it's not about the money. I think the journaling is just about the experience of journaling, capturing moments, like you said, which is cool. So if we were on Amazon, how do we track down this journal? I want to take a look at it.
Well, you'll just look up, type in search fly fishing journal, for instance. You'll see a lot of fly fishing journals, but mine pops up relatively soon, I want to say. So it's just under the author, John David Schneider. I think you can even look up Food Afield fly fishing journal. But if you just look up fly fishing journal, it should pop up. And then you have to look for the author. I don't know what's taking so long with Amazon, but they haven't showed the interior layout yet. And maybe they never will. but it's kind of neat. It's stylized and has lines where you can write. And well, actually, no, I don't think it has lines. I took the lines out because sometimes you just don't write to the same level as the lines. But anyways, it has different prompts like time of day and species and all those things that I mentioned. And then on the side, it has a little barred area where it asks, what do you want to try next time, or things like that. So
Perfect.
yeah, and then I've done a bow hunting journal.
Oh, cool.
I've done an outdoor adventure journal, and they have different prompts because, of course, they have different activities. But yeah,
I love this. This is great. No, I think I thought about this a while back, something like this, and just again, I'd have.
Yeah, you should do it.
Yeah, I haven't been doing enough journaling, but I'm going to stick with that. So you mentioned, let's touch on. I want to cover a lot of things here, but you touched on foraging. Let's talk about that a little bit. So if somebody, foraging, obviously plants are different in all parts of the country, but where does somebody start with the foraging? Is there, again, like resources? What do you recommend if somebody's kind of new to learning about plants? What do they do? And talk about how you do it.
Yeah. Well, I hang out with Kevin a lot. My friend Kevin Kossowan, that's kind of his focus. So with the From the Wild series, he runs foraging clinics and walks and events here in Edmonton. And so he just teaches me a lot. I'm not a big forager. I am kind of focused on so many other layers that the foraging isn't really a big priority for me. So I kind of pick the low-hanging fruit, and literally sometimes.
Yeah.
And
right.
So I get to know like the basic mushrooms that are safe, and I get to know.
Well, that's hard. That's not easy.
It
right?
is. Yeah. No, but there's plenty of resources out there, like books, different books and things like that. So, I'm not going to tell you what mushroom to pick because they're going to be different, and I don't want to make a mistake with that. But there's just basic sort of fireweed that grows everywhere, and sorrel that grows everywhere. And, you can go to most places and find horseradish growing feral and, all sorts of different things. So there's so many resources. I mean, From the Wild is a good resource for that. And Les Stroud is doing a show I think it's called Wild Harvest, where he focuses on that.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's lots.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. I think that's one of those things where you could I typically start with the podcast. I'll go to Apple and I'll just type in, whatever topic, and see what comes up with the pod. And I'm sure there's probably a few podcasts out there, right, that have this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, as we're looking, we started out with the fish, thinking about pan fry. What other animals are you kind of harvesting and, hunting and harvesting and eating out there throughout the year?
Oh, yeah. Well, grouse is my absolute favorite. So ruffed grouse by far is my favorite. That's another thing that I've kind of played around with is, hanging out with chef friends. They like to be all chefy with things, right?
Yeah.
And so they make this amazing food, but it's sort of higher level, more layers. So I've kind of done the opposite, where I really like making fast food from slow food. So, like ruffed grouse, for instance, I love bringing some potatoes with me and some cooking oil, and then I just deep fry French fries, and I have a coating or a batter that goes over chunks of ruffed grouse.
Wow.
And then I'll make like chicken strips and fries that you get at Dairy Queen, right? I don't know if you guys have that down in the US, but yeah. So chicken strips and fries with ruffed grouse is, crazy good, right? So yeah, love the ruffed grouse. We do a lot of hare hunting in the spring. So we eat a lot of hare. And again, that's a dish that just lends itself perfectly to braising. So you just braise it till it falls off the meat, and then you can apply any number of different sauces. So we like experimenting with, different cultural flavors, and so we'll pick a specific flavor that we're going for, and we'll learn the recipe for that sauce, whether it's, East Indian or North African or Central American or whatever, right? It doesn't matter. And sort of pick that flavor. Here's another tip too, is like pre-make some of your sauces, make them at home, and then keep them in the freezer. So you'll have like, little containers or plastic bags filled with myriad flavors or myriad sauces that, and you just bring a couple of those with you, so that when you do catch that fish or that grouse or that venison, whatever it might be, you can have 2 or 3 different meals just by, reheating these different sauces, right? So
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. So hare and
Rough grouse.
yeah, rough grouse. And are you hunting? When do you? I mean, I know you're a little further up north. Are you hunting throughout the whole year, or are you taking a break, or what's that look like?
Well, I've got lots of stuff going on in my life right now. So I'm on a bit of a break right now. We're just sort of stuck in front of a computer at the exact wrong time of year to be doing that. But you know what? We've had a really tough year of fly fishing up here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, lots of heat and droughts and wildfires in May. So you just didn't want to be outside. And then we had some heat closures with streams earlier in the season. And then all of a sudden we've been inundated with rain. So now all the rivers are just blown out, chocolate milk. And so, to have a season like this where I am working on more business stuff in front of the computer, it's a good time. It's a good season to do that. Then, come September, then things open up for us. That's when all of the hunting seasons open. Rough grouse is huge at that time of year. I don't do a lot of whitetail hunting at that time of year because, keeping meat, it's often plus 30 or plus 20 degrees. So whatever that would be, 80 degrees kind of thing. So, you can't, so big game hunting isn't comfortable in those scenarios. So we do a lot of, like I say, rough grouse hunting, but we also do some waterfowl hunting as well. One of the new species that we've been allowed to hunt in the last 2 years has been Sandhill cranes. So that is a lot of fun.
Oh, wow.
So Kevin and I we spent a lot of time in the fall, early fall, like September and October down in the grasslands. So Alberta's neat. Alberta strikes me very similar to Colorado, where you have an eastern portion of is that where you are, Dave?
I'm actually in Oregon on the West Coast, but
oh yeah, sorry.
But we do a ton. We've had as many Colorado episodes probably as the West Coast.
Maybe that's why I thought you were there. But anyways,
Yeah.
So Colorado and Alberta are analogs where you have, like, in the east part of the country, you have prairies and then you have boreal forest in the north, which maybe Colorado doesn't have, but then you have mountains in the west. And so we have all of these ecosystems within a 4 hour drive of my home. I can be in Canadian Shield country, I can be in northern boreal forest, I can be in mountains, or I can be on the prairies, in the same amount of driving. So early in the season, we spent a lot of time down there. And so we'll be chasing sandhill cranes, geese, and upland birds. Tremendous population of gray partridge and sharptails down there. So we spent a lot of time doing that. One of the things that we've had fun doing, because we don't quite know how to do it, but the sandhill crane hunting has been really fun as a spot and stalk. It's fun, dude. Like,
really?
Quite often, yeah. So quite often you'll see the cranes out in the field, but they'll only be 20 yards off the road. And when I say road, they're just 2 tracks, because this is ranching country.
Oh yeah.
So we have permission to be on properties where we can either be on bikes or cars on these roads. And yeah, you can see them off in the distance, and you literally are stalking these sandhill cranes and then coming through the fence line towards them and sneaking up. So we've been successful that way, or pass shooting, or different. You just find, when you're out exploring, you just find these different scenarios that you try to take advantage of. So
right. This is cool.
That's a new culinary ingredient, wild game or wild ingredient that is fun, dude. That is a fun thing to explore. I'm excited about that for this year. Yeah.
That's right.
Ribeye of the sky.
Right. Wow. This is crazy. Okay. And you have other, I guess it sounds like bear hunting was another part. What are some of the other big game that you've hunted over the years?
Well, over the years, I've hunted all of it. I don't hunt moose anymore. I've done a lot of moose hunting and, fly-in moose hunting, and even just local moose hunting around here. Elk. Well, we have a good amount of elk. I guess the one thing I've never really gotten into was the sheep hunting. And I know so many people are so excited about that, but I've never wanted to be bothered with that.
Do you have them? Do you have them up there, like wild populations?
Oh yeah. It's tough to get a tag, like you're waiting. Unless you're bow hunting, you can get a tag every year actually, but you won't shoot one.
Yeah. Where we're at, we have bighorn sheep. They transplanted them a while back, and we have, at least in the eastern, in the desert, they are, it's once in a lifetime. You put in the tag, and once you get it, that's all you get one time, at least in this state.
Yeah. You can go in, if you're a resident of like Northwest Territories or the Yukon Territories in Canada, you can get one like every second year. So my buddy Alex, he is sheep hunting, I think any day now he'll be heading out. So that's crazy. He's, Doll sheep and stone sheep. Yeah.
Oh, right.
But,
nice.
I'm actually headed up there middle of September to hunt with him. I'll be hunting caribou, mountain caribou with him.
Oh, wow,
so
caribou.
I'm stoked about that. I've hunted. We don't have huntable caribou here. We have woodland caribou that are endangered, so they're protected. I have hunted mountain caribou in northern BC before, and I will be hunting them again this year in Yukon. So I'm excited about that.
Let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. Mavrk Fly Fishing specializes in ultralight gear to take your tight line game to the next level. Euro nymphing was always a big struggle for me until I met up with Jeff on his home water. We had a half a day fishing with the Mavrk gear, and it got me fully dialed in. Mavrk only sells direct to anglers, keeping prices low and providing the best personal service. You're going to have to check in with Jeff right now and let him get you lined out on the water and improving your experience before you know it. You should also check out their new high-performance MVX rod, an extra-sensitive laser-accurate Euro nymph rod that weighs only 2.8 ounces. You mix this in with their ultralight stinger reel, and you've got the lightest rod on the market right now. And right now, you can get 20% off your next order if you head over to mavrkflyfishing.com and use the coupon code MavrkWFS20 on your next order. That's MAVRK WFS20, and we'll have a link for this in the show notes as well. You can check in with Jeff and get your Euro game dialed in right now and get on the water and get into fishing. You support this podcast and Mavrk Fly Fishing right now by clicking through that link. Okay, back to the show.
I wanted to talk a little about outdoor skills, some other just general. We're going to take it out of here in a bit, but I wanted to touch base on that. But before we do, I just want to we're doing some of these listener shout outs as we go, just to kind of shout out to some people that we've been connecting with some of our listeners. So Brittany Gassner, she said, I want to read just a quick email. She said, "Hey Dave, she said, love the podcast. I will be watching on Facebook Live. I live in Pennsylvania, and my favorite fish to target is muskie on the fly." So she was referring to on the Facebook Live. We do some of these live events when we're announcing our giveaways, and Brittany checked in there. But she mentioned, her favorite fish to target is muskie, right? So that's another one of those species. What for you? So first of all, let me just say Brittany is going to get a Trestle Artist Series t-shirt. So Brittany, stay tuned for that. We'll get that in the mail to you. But for you, John, what is that species, the fish? Like if you had one to kind of go for, is that an easy choice for you, or do you have like a bucket list trip or species you're looking at?
Well, Brittany's awesome because muskie on a fly, those are hard to catch.
Yeah.
So you're targeting them, like good for you. Like that's awesome. We have an analog. We don't have muskie here in Alberta, but we have an analog, and it's pike. And so we do have northern pike that easily get into the teens and up into the 20s. And when I was fishing in the Northwest Territories, they would routinely get into the 20s. We'd be catching pike that were 25 or 30 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And we would do that on flies. And that is fun because, especially in the spring when they're in shallower water, you're sight fishing, these huge pike with a fly. Wow. I miss that a lot.
Oh,
but we can still do that right here locally. And a friend of mine, Reed Otto, does that religiously. And he's been trying to get me out for the last couple of years now. And it just hasn't worked out because of bear hunting and whatnot. But I really want to get back into that again. If I had to answer your question, though, fish, I'm going to surprise you. The one fish that I target regularly and I love targeting is Rocky Mountain whitefish.
Oh, whitefish, yeah.
They are plentiful. They, are great to catch on flies. I can keep, I forget what I can keep. I never keep my limit, so I've never really looked them up, but I think you can keep 5.
Yeah.
And they are an amazing food outcome, and everybody's going to poo-paw that, but they are. So one of the fun things that we do is I will bring a little container of salt and brown sugar as a curing agent. So I will catch 2 or 3, let's say 2. I don't think I've ever caught 3, but I'll catch 2 good sized Rocky Mountain whitefish and then fillet them, leave the skin on, fillet them, and put them in the container and shake it up and get them curing and leave it overnight. And then I'll build a smoker. And there's so many different ways to build a smoker. Typically where we go, where we're fly fishing for Rockies, there's river rock and stones. So we'll actually like cobble together a smoker out of rocks.
Wow.
Yeah, we've done that a bunch of times. Like almost every time we go out, we do that. And and then you find some alder and you get some coals from your fire and you just manage the coals at the bottom of your smoker. And we bring a steel grate with us that you just slide in between the rocks. So you have a grate and smoke whitefish with a nice single malt or a nice beer. Yeah, and can't beat that. So.
Wow, there's another tip. So you don't have to go out and buy a big smoker. You could literally just do it in the field.
Oh gosh, that's all we do. Yeah.
Perfect.
In fact, in honor of this podcast, I'll put something up on my Instagram. I'll show people what we're talking about with that smoker.
Oh, perfect.
It doesn't make good photography it's just a smoking pile of rocks, but I'll kind of show you what we did.
Yeah, let's do that. Where is that on Instagram? What are you at?
Oh, that's Instagram is at Food Afield Podcast, all one word.
Yeah, Food Afield. So we'll send people out there and follow you and they can take a look, and we'll have this, maybe we post something on the day this goes live, same sort of thing, so people can take a look.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, give me the heads up when you're doing that, and then for sure I'll do that.
Yeah, we'll send everybody over to take a look on your Instagram.
Thanks, bud.
I know you have some other good photos and stuff there too to follow you. This is great. So you mentioned I guess all of this is kind of outdoor skills, but again, I think of like, especially for you, you're out there, you're making a smoker out of rocks and what you have. I mean, if somebody's out there, whether fishing, hunting in the woods, what are those outdoor skills somebody should need? And I think you mentioned it, like somebody's from the city, right? They're new to it or they're new to fly fishing. What do they need to know to kind of be safe, do things right out there? What do you tell somebody?
Well, you touched on so many things. If you're talking about safety, well then, learn how to start a fire, right? That would be the most important skill.
How do you do that? Well, let's start there. So the fire, without going too deep, because, you can rub sticks together, you can do, or have some stuff in your bag. And what do you recommend on that?
I use a flint and steel. It's just the absolute, foolproof way to start a fire. Flint and steel will always create a spark. So the other thing that I do though is I have a little container. It's an old snuff container. It's steel, so it's really old, and it's filled with char cloth. So I'll make char cloth, which is a whole nother topic of conversation. Or I'll keep like birch bark. I'll keep a rolled up piece of birch bark in my fire kit bag. So I always have something that's dry. And then, of course, the challenge is to find burning material that's dry. And in your neck of the woods in Oregon, I would imagine that's more of a challenge than I face. But
yeah, it depends. It depends on where you're at. But yeah,
typically you can find something, right? Yeah. And even if you have to split, some wood to get to some dry stuff in the middle of it, there's always a way.
Yeah,
there's always a way.
Good tip.
So, yeah, that would be my number one tip as far as safety goes, is be able to start a fire. Fire is home.
Yeah,
it's ingrained into our genetic memory. Fire is home, so it'll settle you down if you're in trouble. It'll calm you if you're hurt, or comfort you. It'll stop you from being hypothermic. It just solves almost all of your problems. It's the first thing I do especially if I'm out by myself. You get feelings of loneliness, or we're not designed to be alone. Especially in the wild. We've always hunted in packs, and we've always been part of a tribe. So, when you're alone and you get a fire going, that can be a powerful thing. As far as enjoyment goes, though, I would say the number one bushcraft skill to learn would be woodworking. I don't know. Again, I'm never going to get sponsored on my show from a landing net company, because I just build my own landing nets, and that's a lot of fun. I've just put one up on my Instagram page not that long ago, where I incorporated a mule deer antler into the handle.
Oh, wow.
And how it forks, right? And then I've attached a bent piece of hazel in a loop around that antler, and then net is the big thing. So I was actually contemplating making my own netting, and I was thinking about this last night. So of course we've made nets since the beginning of time, so it's not hard to make a net, but you want to treat fish properly. And I know, like, the modern nets, they are like some sort of rubber compound, right? That, is more gentle on the fish if you are releasing them. And I still release fish. I mean, obviously, like if I'm if I'm fishing for whitefish, that's the other sort of thing that comes into play. If I'm targeting whitefish, I want to catch 2 whitefish, and I happen to catch 4 or 5 cutthroats before I catch a whitefish, I might release those fish, right? So I'm trying to think of what netting material I can use to make. I was trying to think of like silk rope or something like that. I don't know. You'll have to stay tuned and see what I
Yeah, we will. This is awesome.
But there's all sorts of things you can make in camp. So I talked about like, painting or journaling or photography or whatever. So, what can you make when you're out in the bush? There's weaving, like weave baskets or
right.
What are you talking about, Schneider? But anyways, it's pretty cool. Like if you can make a little, container of something like and bring it home to your wife or or your husband, weave a little fly box for your partner, and so you've gone on your fishing trip and you come home with this little surprise of something that you've made for them. And I don't know. Yeah. I get a little romantic about stuff like that. So
right. Well, that's your thing. I mean, right? You're doing. You said at the start. I mean, a pan and a grate
and a good knife and an axe
and a good knife. Yeah. So there is a sponsor you could have. What is your knife type of choice? Like, what style of knife do you like?
I've got a knife that I've had for years that I love, and it's North Mountain.
And is this like a fold up or a straight edge, a straight blade?
Straight. Yeah, North Mountain knives.
Yeah. Okay.
I bought a knife of his. I don't even know where he is. Vermont, I want to say. Heart of Appalachia. Yeah. West Virginia. Yeah. Anyways, I have his Mountain Hunter, and that's my favorite knife. Yeah.
There you go. All right. Perfect. So, well, I think we've covered a number of things, kind of, I think, keeping it high level, which is what I wanted to do here. As people are listening and they're thinking about this, I'm always thinking of one thing I think about is where can we send them, on top of what we've talked about today. You've mentioned a few other people. Any other resources you have out there, other folks that you know of that would be good to get people into this more on, just like we're saying? I mean, I think that the theme is like you do. It's trying to do hunting, fishing with the least stuff possible. It seems like that's kind of the theme here.
Yeah. Hey, Dave, that's a great way to put it. Yeah. That's sort of, minimalistic enjoyment, because that's the biggest barrier, right? Is like, people getting started in this. Well, I don't have $2,000 to spend on a fly rod and reel and all the gear.
Right. I don't have waders and boots and everything.
Yeah. You don't need all of that. River runs through it, man. Yep. They used to just wear their boots and get their pants wet. Mm-hmm. And so anyways, and I have nice waders, so I'm not.
That's right.
But to get started, you need very little. You can buy a used fly rod. You can make a fly rod. I've made several. So anyways.
Yeah, that's perfect.
A good place to go. I don't have any financial connection to it, but he is, one of my best friends. That's Kevin Kossowan, and his series is From the Wild. So if you go to fromthewild.ca, his website is there, and you can purchase the show from there. But he also has all of the foraging tips, and he's got a strong Instagram account as well, where he's talking about a lot of different foraging items and different things like that. Great photography. Yeah, good guy to follow.
Perfect. And I want to leave it with I want to go back to podcasting, because I want to leave us with, we're both podcasters, I mean, you're doing a lot of stuff, but I think, we both have that love of, the podcast space. So what is your, looking, first of all, on the podcast, do you listen to a lot of other podcasts, or are you more just doing your own thing?
I do listen to other podcasts, but not as often as I'd like, because just so many good things out there. So I've listened to yours. I wouldn't say I religiously listen to any particular podcast, but I also enjoy, because I'm so immersed in it. I don't know what you're like, but I'm so immersed in it that sometimes I just want to listen to a show about history or about anthropology or UFOs or Sasquatch or like whatever, dude.
So you listen to podcasts and other topics other than fishing and hunting?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, me too.
Sure. Just to take, I'm just so ingrained in this industry with everything I do that it's kind of fun to just get distracted by other things.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I try not to listen to other fly fishing podcasts and stuff, just because, I want to try to, not be influenced, to kind of do my own thing.
Well, yeah, exactly. There's that too, right? Yeah. And I've run into that a few times where it's like, oh, I just finished talking about that, and somebody else is talking about it, and it's it's just accidental that happens. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So what would be one, if you say one other podcast, just so, because I always love finding new podcasts. Do you have one in your feed?
Dude, I'm not going to go into that trap. I mean,
no?
if you're going to listen to a podcast, listen to the Wet Fly Swing podcast. Yeah.
All right. There you go. We got a good plug for it. And then what about your show? So out of all the podcasts, you're reaching 100, which is an amazing milestone. I think I used to hear people say, if you make it past 10 episodes, you're kind of, getting past that first stage. But once you hit 100,
you're in the top 5%. Yeah,
exactly. You're in the top. Most 99% of people are already out of the space.
Yeah.
But you're hitting 100. What is there a podcast topic, guest, somebody that really stands out from you over the last couple of years, or since you've been doing this, as one we should check out? Or what do you recommend if we want to go listen to one of your podcast episodes? Where do we start?
Well, start with the latest one.
Okay.
Because they just keep getting better over time.
Yeah.
My first few episodes were absolutely crap. So if you want to have a good laugh, go and listen to those. But, the latest one was with Clay Newcomb.
Yeah.
He's with MeatEater.
Yeah, MeatEater. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And it was a great conversation. And it didn't follow any of the sort of topics that I like to follow. It was just talking about Clay and his start with the bear hunting magazine and his start in the industry. And we talked a bit about traditional bow hunting. He's famous for that one YouTube video where the bear literally comes and touches his arrow, a huge boar. So he's close hunted bears with his longbow. And so we tell those stories, and then we talk about MeatEater, and the evolution into MeatEater and what that means for him. And we just we get into a lot of different things there in that episode. So I really like that one. Yeah, it's one of my better ones. But yeah, there's all sorts of them there. Variety is the spice of life. So I don't know that I have an absolute favorite.
You cover a lot of stuff.
Yeah. What about you? What's your favorite one?
Of our podcast?
Yeah, if somebody's going to listen to Wet Fly Swing, which one should they listen to?
Yeah, it is a tough question because there's so many, especially us, because we're approaching 500. And it's like, oh my gosh, where do you start? But I just think, okay, I had so many memorable episodes. Like from Henry Winkler, right? The Fonz from Happy Days. He was this movie star back in the day. Having him on.
The Fonz? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I had the Fonz on, right? So that was a pretty epic podcast there, but that was totally different. And then, we've had so many, like Joan Wolfe, right? She's just this, with two little girls, myself, and thinking Joan Wolfe has been this bigger than life female in fly fishing, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think of that. I think of Frank Moore. I had him on. He's passed away since, but I visited him at his house at the place that was burnt by the fires a few years back. But he was just, a war hero, right? He was literally stormed the beaches at Normandy, came back and just, right? So those are the people I think I think those are the stories that get me. It's even the non-fly fishing stuff. It's really just hearing those crazy stories of people that did a lot more than I've done and celebrating them in the history, right? So I guess that's where I go, is to those.
Nice.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's, like I said, I think the MeatEater is interesting, and maybe I'll leave it here because I think the MeatEater, I always look around, you're like, oh, everybody's comparing ourselves, and I try not to do that. But
yeah, human nature.
Yeah, human nature. MeatEater for us, it's, outdoor space, not a total comparison because we're fly, but really you are in that space, the hunting, and totally different than MeatEater. But do you look at that and see these guys, how they've created this? I don't even know how big the thing is, but it's gigantic. They're probably like the Joe Rogan of the outdoors. Do you look at them and think okay, how do I continue getting to a place where I'm growing, getting better and closer to that? Or what's your take there?
I have a theory on podcasting and what is happening, and I compare it to what happened with TV. So back in the 50s, every little town had a TV station, and it would serve a small area, and it would have all of its own local shows. Here in Edmonton, we had a TV station, and it had, a local kids show and a local talk show, and and then slowly over time, shows, network shows started introducing themselves into those little stations, and then pretty soon, within a few decades, all of those local shows went away, and they were encompassed by networks. And I kind of see that happening with podcasting. I'm seeing networks pop up here and there. And then I've been invited to join several of them, and I haven't done that yet. And so I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to be, so In answer to your question, that's exactly what MeatEater is doing. They're acquiring assets that they think fit their brand. And I don't know what to think about that. Like, if you listen to the show with Clay Newcomb, you can make your own judgment on that. You know, he is a full-time employee of MeatEater. And I am not sure that I would want to do that. In fact, you know, I'm being polite. I'm really sure I would not want to do that.
Yeah, you won't want to do that. Yeah.
So now, having said that, if, you know, Steve phones me today and goes, John, we want you to be in MeatEater crew as a content creator, and here's a truckload of money.
Right.
You know, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
What's my term?
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
how do you?
So I don't know. I don't want to be a hypocrite. Number one, I'm not going to get a phone call from Steve Rinella anytime soon, but you know, you contemplate those things.
Totally. Yeah. We had Joe Cermilli on from the MeatEater. He had the show, the Bent podcast, and we talked about some of these same things. I think he, you know, had a break up with them, right, and went out and did his own thing. I think probably, I'm guessing it helped him being with the MeatEater, although he had a whole history of journalism and stuff before. But no, my take on it is, I think podcasting, the reason why it's resonating so much is that it's long form. You know, they're hearing like you now. We listen to your story for this today, but it's also independent. You know, I mean, that's the one cool thing. Like, literally, it's the one thing where it's totally independent. I mean, like, our podcast, your podcast is your thing. You can do whatever you want, and you can't do that in a lot of places anymore. So I think that's what people love.
Yeah, nobody can shut it down or take it away. Yeah,
no, and there's a whole movement about that, right? Because people did think like Apple Podcasts was going to. They've actually been a great partner in podcasting. You know what I mean? Like, they've always understood that independent part, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, your feed is your feed. You own it. Nobody can take it away. So I think that's one of the cool things about it. I think people love that part. I know I do. I'm
just going broke doing it is the problem.
Yeah.
Like, there's no monetization for me yet, and I don't have that brain because I have a mindset of minimalism, I guess, right? Where I don't want a lot of gear and I don't want a lot of, right? So I simplify my life. And then you're asking me now to go well beyond my comfort zone and complicating it with how do I get paid to do this?
Well, I think for you got to start thinking, I think, outside of the gear, since the gear isn't your thing, or well, having some gear, but you know, think of the other whatever groups, people that could, you know, utilize your platform or, you know, what you have going to, you know.
I am open to suggestions, Dave.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think what we should do, John, since we're well over an hour here, I think we should hold this maybe till the next one. I'm sure we're going to keep in touch. I know I would like to. I'll send everybody out to foodafieldpodcast.com if they have questions for you. And I just want to thank you for all the time today. I really appreciate what you're doing. I hope to get better at some of the stuff you do as we move forward.
Yeah, thanks for all your support, Dave. I really appreciate you having me on.
That is a wrap. You can grab all of the show notes at wetflyswing.com. And please follow us on Instagram and share this episode out with someone you love. Please send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com, if you have any feedback or want us to put together an episode on this podcast for you. Check in anytime. I hope you enjoyed this podcast and would love to meet up with you on the water. We have new fly fishing schools going all year long and all around the country, so if you want to connect, let's do it right now. All right, time to get out of here. I hope you have a great evening. I hope you have a great morning or great afternoon wherever in the world you are, and I appreciate you for stopping by and checking out the show today. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.